So this section right here, in our textbook, it's chapter 7 that we would be starting. So if you talk to anybody who's had this before you, and you hear about chapter 7, this is what it is. But I've rearranged some stuff because I took some things out of what pre-cal has to cover. So I'm going to call it Unit 6 still, but this is the old textbook, chapter 7. And I love doing this stuff right here. It's like a puzzle. Some students don't love it, and others can do it so quickly in their head that it's pretty impressive. So I always say that if there was one section that I could look at to tell me how you're going to do in calculus, it would be this one section right here, if you're going to take calculus. So it is not because you necessarily need to know this really well for calculus. That is not the reason. So like if you don't understand this really, really well, but you're wanting to take calculus, it could still probably be okay. There's some kids sitting in calculus right now that maybe didn't do so great whenever we went over this section. It's not that you need to know this material really well. These problems are going to be sort of challenging problems because there is no step 1, step 2, step 3, boom, you're done sort of algorithm that I can give you to solve these, right? So what we're going to see is we're going to see here that there's going to be like lots of different strategies, and you have to recognize what strategy applies. And it's going to get you somewhere. A lot of times you might try something and it won't work, so you got to quit and try something else. So it's sort of like a puzzle to figure out here. So it is, if you can do this really well, especially if you get it pretty quickly, and if you don't, that's okay, because a lot of students, it takes them a little longer on this, then your brain works in a way that is, if this is easy to you, you need to sign up for calculus, because you're going to probably like it. Because calculus, although, again, it's not that because it's a lot of this material, it is because, you know, this class shifts in that direction a little bit, in that not all of it is so much like here is this formula, or here is this strategy, or here's this like step 1, step 2, step 3 to follow, and you get your answers. There's a little bit more you got to think about the situation and see what applies. But in this class, we still have a lot of formulas. If you want to find the period of a sine function, you do 2 pi over b, right? It's not to say calculus does not have formulas, but it's a lot of understanding concepts. There's a lot of things thrown in where you've got to know what to apply when, which might not explicitly be told to you. So this applies. And while we're on this subject, and since we had a couple extra minutes and we're a little ahead today anyway, we're getting towards the end of the semester here. So probably like February or March next year, they'll start doing course registration for you guys. You guys have 4 different options of what you can take, assuming that you pass this class, and I do not foresee that anybody will not pass this class. When you pass this class, you have completed your graduation requirements for math. So technically, you do not have to take a math class your senior year to graduate. However, I would assume that pretty much everybody in here plans on going to college, either a 4-year or a 2-year, doesn't matter which one. And if you are going to college, they highly recommend you take a math class your senior year. Because you guys know that whenever you have a big gap, you forget a lot of things. And it is not a good idea to stop here and then go to college and have to take a math class and you haven't seen it for 2 whole years. For you guys, it'll be, 2 full years since you've really seen it, since you had it first semester. So they're going to want you to take a math class next year. So that's like, I don't even know why you would not take a math class next year. But technically, you could fail your math class next year and still graduate, assuming you have enough credits to graduate. So your classes to take, you can take Math 4 with Coach Wood, or typically Coach Wood is who teaches it, which is, in my opinion, not the best option for you guys, because everybody in here, I think, first semester had an A or a B. So, I mean, you guys have been pretty successful in pre-calculus. If you take Math 4, you are going to be in Coach Wood's class with kids who made D's in regular Math 3 last year. So, assuming you were pretty successful here, I do not usually suggest that you take that class, but technically you could. Then your other two options are either to take the stats class. Actually, there might be three. There might be 5 options here. What most people do is they either take stats class at Surrey or they take calculus. The stats class at Surrey is going to be easier than calculus for sure. Although in the last little bit, some kids have struggled in it more than they used to. Over the 2 years ago, I think some kids really struggled in it, but I feel like it was probably because they weren't doing their work, because they were pretty good for me, and that class is typically not that difficult, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I wasn't in the class. But you got stats class at Surrey or calculus. For calculus, if you have an A in this class, I will without a doubt recommend you to take calculus if you want to take it. I'm not going to force you to take it, but if you want to take it, I will give you the recommendation, even if I don't like you and don't want you to be in there. If you have an A, there's no justification for me to say that you can't take it. So if you have an A in this class, you're welcome to sign up for calculus. Please go ahead. If you have a B, generally I say it needs to be at least an 85 or better. If you have an 85 or better, then we probably should talk about it and see if it's the right fit for you to take calculus if you're wanting to. I have students, well, I don't know if I have anybody this year in calculus that has made a B, that made a B in pre-cal, but they had COVID pre-cal. They didn't have regular pre-cal, and almost everybody had an A in COVID pre-cal. So that's not really a normal year. But I have some students who in a regular year would have had B's that are in calculus now. It's going to be tougher if you're in that crowd, but you could still do it. So if, in general, I tell you, you should take, if pre-cal's easy for you, you should take calculus. If maybe it's not easy, but you can do it, here are some things to consider. If you are going to go into anything medical, well, I'm not sure about nursing, but if you're going to go, if you want to do any sort of like medical degree where you're going to have to go past your 4 years, so if you're wanting to do like basically you're going to major in biology and then do med school after that, a major in biology is what you usually do for that, and majors in biology have to have at least Calc 1. Any science is going to require you to take at least Calc 1. Some sciences require you to take Calc 1, 2, and 3, depending on what you go for. I mean, if you go for like physics or something, you're going to have to do crazy amounts of math. But computer science is going to require at least Calc 1. A lot of business majors require Calc 1. It depends on what you're going into. Engineering is going to require Calc 1, 2, and 3 and differential equations. So if you think about what your plan is, if you're going on any of those routes, I highly suggest that you take calculus here with me. Number one, I love the class. I love to teach it. I love, having you guys here. But even if you don't get credit, and most of my students usually get credit, even if you don't get credit, you've seen it before because you're going to have to take calculus in college, and it's sometimes a really hard class when you take it, because if you take it here with me, you will have me every day for an hour and a half all year long. It is a year-long class, so you got to sign up for 2 semesters. If you take it in college, it is going to be one semester. Usually it's 4 or 5 days a week. It's usually a 4-hour class, so you're in class 4 hours a week for a semester versus 7.5 hours a week for a year with me. So you get a lot more attention here. Also, when you take it in college, sometimes you are in a class taught by a graduate student that may or may not speak fluent English, that has 100 students in there. Depending on where you go. Now, I didn't have that experience. I started in Calc 2, but I didn't have that experience. I went to Meredith College. But sometimes that happens. So it can be tough if you take it at school. Mm-hmm. Every week. So an hour a day for 4 days is usually what they do. Or sometimes it's like a 45-minute class for 5 days. But so in general, which you guys have taken a lot of theory classes, but in general, your hours for the class are how many hours per week you are in there. Usually they're 3-hour classes. Calculus is usually a 4-hour class in college. Mm-hmm.
So if we take it here, what do
most schools in North Carolina will take a 3 on the AP exam. Now, if you're going to Duke, I think they require 5. If you're going into engineering or math-based, if you're going into something that requires Calc 2 at state, you got to make a 4. But if you're just like, give me the credit, I'm never taking math again, I think you can get by with a 3 at state, or maybe it's something like that. But so most schools are going to take a 3. So if all you have to have is Calc 1, then you can take, if you take it here and you pass that exam and you make a 3, then they're going to give you credit in college and you may not ever have to take another math class. That's something to think about. Calculus is also going to be considered. It really doesn't help you on GPA because they give you guys too much credit for taking Surrey classes. Surrey classes should really be done differently, because taking music appreciation at Surrey is not the same as taking physics at Surrey or taking, a difficult class at Surrey. Some of the Surrey classes are super hard, and some of them you guys know are really not super hard. And they all get 5-point credit, like taking an AP class, which makes me angry sometimes. But not all things are about that GPA. It's not the most important. So GPA-wise, it really doesn't help you that much to take calculus, but it will be seen as taking like the highest math we offer. So it's like you'll be seen as challenging yourself because it is more difficult than stats. Stats is a good class, and lots of things need it for their major, although you may want to sort of check in because I think there might be a few places that don't take that stats class from Surrey, but I think most places will. Stats is a good class too. So if you are knowing that you are not going to need calculus in college, and you want to go that route, that's fine. I also have, I think it was just Jack, but Jack's taking calculus and stats right now, because if it's not, as long as it's not the same class period, it depends on the schedule, but as long as it's not the same class period, if you're going into like a math-heavy field and you know you're probably going to need both of them, you can do both if you really like math. I wouldn't suggest that if it's not your favorite. But anyway, so that's a long explanation, but if you have any questions about it, come talk to me now, or you can come back and talk to me whenever it comes time to sign up for classes, and we can talk about what you think you should do. But I hope that many of you will sign up for calculus. I try not to force you to do it or really like overly persuade you, but I do love the class. It is tough, but it is a really interesting class. It's my favorite material that I teach. And if you like math and like problem solving, then you might really enjoy it. If you like math, go talk to Jack Zamudio and ask him if he likes calculus. If you don't like math, I can give you names of some other people you might want to go talk to ask them what they think about calculus. So I did talk a while back. I was at Elkin Jewelers and was talking to Stephanie Prim, which I did not teach Stephanie. She had Miss White. But she said that she took calculus in high school and she did not pass the exam. And she was so upset that she didn't pass the exam, and she, felt awful that she was just dumb because she didn't pass the exam. But when she got to college, she had to take Calc 1, and she said she made an easy A in Calc 1 because she had taken it here first. Even though she wasn't as successful as she would have liked here, it really helped her there. So that's another thing to think about there. Sign up for calculus. Also, we need enough people to make a class too. So he likes for me to have 10, but I've had less than 10 before. So, and hopefully with 4 math teachers, maybe it would still make with 8 or 9. But if I got 10 kids, it's pretty good chance that they'll let us have it. So talk your friends into it if you want to have calculus. Community calculus is my favorite. All right, so we're just going to do a real quick introduction and do a problem here. So reciprocal identities. You should already know these, right? We've gone over these. Our quotient identities. We also learned these whenever we were doing unit circle stuff, right? So you should know these. Ones you do not know yet are Pythagorean identities. Sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. And something I need to tell you here is that when you see sine squared theta, that square is kind of in an odd spot right there. This means sine of theta squared. So it's the whole thing squared. They use this notation, I think, just so you don't have to have so many parentheses, and it kind of can get confusing with parentheses there if they don't. So that this square here means that the whole thing is squared. So we're going to have a quiz. We're not going to do it Monday when we come back. We'll probably do it. I think we'll probably do it Tuesday. And it's going to be another memorization quiz. And on this memorization quiz, you need to know, I didn't do opposite angle. You'll need to know all these identities. So you should already know reciprocal. You should already know the quotient identities. These, you're going to memorize, and I'm going to show you a trick to help you with the last two. And then you're going to have opposite angle, which is on that next slide. Here's a trick to help you with this one. Most students are pretty good at getting this right here. If I go ask my calculus class right now to give me trig identities, they can tell me that one. They probably cannot tell me the next two. But it is okay, because look what happens if I divide everything by sine squared theta. Okay, sine squared divided by sine squared is going to give me 1. What's cosine over sine? Cotangent, 1 over sine, cosecant. So that gives us that other identity, right? So if you don't have it memorized, but you can do that to get the other one, that's fine. Also, I could do that same thing again with cosine. If I do cosine squared theta, cosine squared theta, cosine squared theta. So that would give me tangent, 1, and secant there. So that's how you can get from that first one to the other two. And then the last one you see here is opposite angle. We don't use this a lot, but we will occasionally see it. If I do sine of negative A, it equals negative sine of A. But if I do cosine of negative A, it just equals cosine A. So those are the ones. So we're going to have those. We're going to skip that right there because I'm going to do one of these problems. Okay, so here's one problem. I'm going to give you an idea of what we're going to do. When verifying trig identities, they are telling us this is true. What we have to do is we have to manipulate this to prove that it is true. So when we're doing this, we are not going to move anything from one side to the other. Everything has to be worked we can work on both sides, but we can't move anything from one side to the other. So, in this particular problem, I see I've got sine cubed x plus sine x cosine squared x. I can see here that both of these have sine values, right? I've got 3 of them right here. I've only got 1 right here. So I can factor out a sine x. If I do that, I'm taking a sine x away from this first term, which is going to give me sine squared x. And then I'm taking the sine out of this one. There was only 1 to begin with, so that it's just gone. So I got cosine squared x. So now I'm going to think about my trig identities. I know you haven't had time to think about them much, but we just saw this. Where did we see it? It's the Pythagorean identities, and it equals 1. That is a fact. We know that's always true. So we can take this right here, and we can replace it with 1. And we want to show that step because we're showing we know that equals 1. And then what is sine x times 1? It is just sine x, which is what the other side equals. So the idea is that we've got to get both sides to equal the same thing. And this proves that it is in fact equal, right? And these very much you have to show each step, because showing each step is the work. We already know the answer. We already know this equals sine x. We got to show why it equals sine x. Mm-hmm.
From that, from Monday memorization test, or do you have to do it
Monday we will not have the test. We'll probably do it on Tuesday since it's just memorization. But it will just be the memorization quiz. It will not be. Like actually Tuesday.
Leslie, you've got to.
Sorry.
Oh, Leslie. You don't math well. I know. I'm telling you. You don't math. I don't want to. No, but imagine if you were. 3 times as legal. None of you guys